In the ever-intensifying US-China rivalry, NVIDIA, America's chip industry crown jewel, is at the center of a storm. In a stunning deal, NVIDIA and AMD will give the US government 15% of all revenue from AI chip exports to China in return for export licenses. The US government has effectively become a silent business partner, taking its cut from every chip sold abroad. For NVIDIA, it's a desperate compromise: lose China's massive market or pay tribute to Washington. As one analyst put it, the Constitution forbids taxing exports, but here we are. And so, America's most powerful tech company bows to its own government, not for innovation, but for survival. While NVIDIA negotiates for its future, the dream of American AI dominance is fading. Billions are being poured into AI projects that bring little real progress. Data centers burn through power day and night, electricity bills rise, consumers pay more, workers fear AI will replace them, and the same executives who once promised a revolution are quietly shelving their grand ambitions. Across the Pacific, the story is completely different. In China, AI is thriving. Electricity costs are falling, not rising. Factories and hospitals are using AI not as a futuristic experiment, but as a practical engine of growth. Beijing's goal is clear. By 2030, China intends to be the world leader in artificial intelligence. And unlike the US, it's making real progress. China has the data, the workforce, and the willpower. NVIDIA knows this. It cannot afford to lose access to Beijing or Shenzhen. Even if it means sacrificing 15% of its earnings to Washington, it's a small price to stay relevant in the only market where AI is truly booming. But this deal exposes a deeper truth. America, in trying to restrain China, has turned its own companies into captives, forced to pay their government for permission to compete. It's protectionism disguised as patriotism, and it reveals just how far Washington is willing to go to maintain control. Donald Trump signs a shocking measure, a 100% tariff on nations importing Russian oil via Chinese channels. It wasn't just an economic move, it was a declaration of war in plain sight. But Beijing didn't answer with threats. It responded with power, literally. Within hours, China's massive hydroelectric dams roared to life, flooding the national grid. It was a demonstration of its ultimate weapon, energy independence. Trump's calculation was to force allies to choose between US market access or Chinese oil. But his plan carried a fatal flaw. Tariffs, in reality, aren't punishments for foreigners, they're taxes on Americans. Rising import costs hit US companies and households first. Prices climb, inflation grows. And suddenly, the very voters Trump promised to protect begin to suffer. As Trump tightened his grip, China dug in deeper. Its vast energy networks gave it endurance, the ability to keep factories running and exports flowing even under extreme pressure. It was no longer a contest of ideology. It had become a test of stamina. Then came the next blow. Trump's administration slapped a 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee, one of America's top imports. Almost overnight, prices doubled. A 50-pound bag that once cost $147 now sold for over $350. Coffee shops across the US struggled to stay afloat. But just as Washington turned its back on Brazil, Beijing opened its doors. China approved 183 Brazilian coffee exporters, granting them 5-year licenses to ship directly to Chinese consumers. For Xi Jinping, it was a masterstroke. Coffee in China is booming, consumption rising 20% every year. Shanghai now has more coffee shops than New York or Tokyo. By redirecting Brazilian beans away from America, China didn't just help Brazil. It repositioned itself as Latin America's dependable partner. Trump used tariffs as weapons. Xi used markets as incentives. Two leaders playing the same game, but with opposite strategies. And China's next move came from the skies. In Beijing, President Xi personally oversaw one of the largest aviation deals in history, 500 Airbus jets ordered by China's biggest airlines. Air China, China Eastern, Southern Airlines, Xiamen Air, and others divided the purchase among themselves. The message was unmistakable. While Boeing waited for U.S. tariffs to fix trade relations, China turned to Europe instead. The deal, originally meant to mark the 50th anniversary of China-EU ties, was delayed by politics, but it still went through. Airbus factories in Tianjin expanded production, while Boeing remained locked out of the Chinese market. Since 2017, no major Boeing orders have come from China. Airbus now dominates the world's fastest-growing aviation sector, while Boeing struggles with billions in debt and falling output. Xi's move wasn't just about airplanes, it was diplomacy through industry. By sending billions to Europe, China built goodwill with Brussels at a time when the EU was debating tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. In one move, China weakened America's leverage, strengthened ties with Europe, and showcased its economic power, all without firing a single shot. The lesson is clear: Trump's tariffs isolate. Xi's trade strategy integrates, and as the world watches, the US and China continue their dangerous dance, one betting on control, the other on connection. Every chip sold, every plane ordered, every bag of coffee traded is now part of a larger struggle, a fight for the future balance of global power. In the end, the question is no longer who can win an argument. It's who can endure and who will define the 21st century.